Check, check. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Hope everyone's feeling full and not too sleepy. We're going to make a short start. I think we're only 5 minutes away, so that's good, and everyone's ready to go, which is good. Before we start on Meet Your Members, I'll explain a little bit about what that is in a second. But before we start, if you'd like to rise, we'll just open with prayer through Brother Mace Mansfield.
Dear God, we come to you now. We thank you for so many blessings that you give us. We thank you that we're able to share a meal with each other. We thank you for our ecclesia here, and we thank you for each one of the members that make up this beautiful ecclesia that you've blessed us with. And we thank you that we've got a moment where we can learn a little bit more about some of our members, learn about their faith and how you've worked in their lives, and a little bit more about their personalities, so we can become closer as an ecclesia. Thank you for everything that you provide us, and we pray for your Son's soon return, and it's through him we offer this prayer now. Amen.
We go. All right, back up and running. So tonight, or this afternoon, we're going to have the privilege of hearing from 2 or 3 of our members and learning a little bit about their life growing up and where they came from, a little bit about, like May said in his prayer, about their personalities, and a little bit more importantly, how they came into the truth and found their faith and learnt about God and why they got baptised. We're a ecclesia of about 100, 110 people. I would have loved to hear everyone's stories, but that's a near impossibility. We'll probably have that going for the next 5-10 years. And there's some really, really interesting stories about how people learnt the truth or came in and got baptised. So tonight we're going to ask a few people up. Some of you know Brother Bert, and Caleb and Emily. So if you'd like to come up, we'll have a chat and interview, and we'll go from there. Thanks, guys. A little bit daunting for these guys, so don't judge them too much. I spent the night with Dave and Bert on Saturday night. And I found out a lot of very interesting things. I'm going to give the mic to you, Bert, first up. And I found out a lot of things I didn't know and some things I did know, which was quite interesting. And I think it'd be really cool to share that with you all and go from there. So welcome, guys. Thank you very much for taking this opportunity to put yourself out on a limb and be in the spotlight a little bit. I know Caleb's loving it because he's such a spotlight person. You can tell he's pretty nervous. Bert looks like he's done this every day of his life, so that's good. That's awesome. How old are you, Bert? 79?
Yes.
So does that mean that you're 80 this year?
It does. It means I'm 9 years past my best before date.
well, yeah, okay, we'll judge that. That's fine. Now, the other thing I wanted to bring up too, Bert, and we were talking Saturday night about this, and it was about the choc wedge story. And you were telling me about a story about that. So do you want to tell?
Fairly recently, Michael went to prove how old he was by talking about 30-cent McDonald's cones. Well, I can remember when choc wedges went up to 2 cents. And at the time, icy poles were 2 for a cent. That is ancient.
That's extremely old.
I could give those to you, those figures to you in pennies, but it would confuse most of you.
I can't remember too many days. I remember the choc wedges, but I reckon they were about 60 cents when I was growing up. But do you ever remember the Sunny Boys and the Snips?
Yes.
Remember the Snips? Everyone remember the Snips back in the day? What were Snips? Anyone know what Snips were? Triangular thing, yes, with milk. Exactly. So frozen milk it was. They were snips back in the day. Do any of the young kids know what a snip is? No, you wouldn't know what it is. Jared, would you know what a snip is? Nah, no idea. So that's, what are you, 20, 22? So that was quite a long time ago. Yeah, yeah, the prisms, yeah. They still sell them, do they? Right, there you go. I didn't know that. Did not know that. I know the Sunny Boys were popular, and they had a show bag, I think, at the show where you could get a Sunny Boy show bag, which was quite cool. That's gives you a fair indication of how many years Bert's been around. Now, Bert, you were born, when was it? 1944?
Yep, November 44. 7 months before the war finished in the Netherlands.
That's right.
And 6 days after I was born, my dad was dragged off to Germany to help them with the munitions works, what they called slave labourers, where you didn't get paid and you didn't really get fed. So, yeah, he came back 7 months later at the end of the war. About half the man he went off. So, yeah.
And your great-grandpa, he was something to do with shipping, hence
yeah,
you were living in Rotterdam, was it, in Holland?
Really before trains and trucks and so forth, and it probably still a fair bit of the freight around Europe was river barges. And while we've all got sort of a mental picture of a river barge being a house one end and freight the other end, but in actual fact there were fleets of barges towed by trucks, towed by now I can't think what they're called.
The barges?
No, the tugs, thank you. Yeah, tugboats. And my great-grandfather owned about 30-something tugs and a few hundred of the barges. He had 11 children, and when he died, he also owned half a dozen pubs, by the way. He left the best of the pubs to his eldest son who'd been running it, and all the rest of his estate was sold up and split amongst the 11 children. The younger 10 didn't really appreciate the fact that they missed out on the big pub, and so they fought in courts for about 14 years, and at the end of that time, millions of dollars was converted back to a change of furniture each.
Yes,
that's what fighting does within a family.
Yeah, love the family. It's probably where the original, talking about pubs, where the original VB came from, is it? Or no, that's terrible. So you were born in Rotterdam, and that's in Holland.
Yep.
Or Netherlands, or
well,
what's the other name for it?
For those who are confused, two of the provinces or states of the Netherlands are called Holland: North Holland, South Holland. But they consider themselves the most important, so they tend to refer to the country as Holland. But the others don't like it very much.
Okay.
Pretty much the same way that New South Wales think of themselves as being the centre of the universe.
So in 1944-45, Rotterdam was bombed.
Rotterdam was bombed in, I think, 41 by the Germans,
okay.
In an attempt to get the Dutch to surrender. And then the Allies continued to bomb it for the rest of the war because it was the main port into Europe. Yeah. So, yeah, there wasn't much left of Rotterdam.
Yeah, okay. So you were there 1944. What was one of your earliest memories of growing up in Holland?
Well, I can remember the birth of one of my brothers. I was 4 at the time.
Yep.
That's probably the most spectacular of those. But the sound of pile drivers, bearing in mind that the Netherlands is basically one big river delta, so it's all sand and mud. So to build decent-sized buildings, you have to drive these piles into the mud. So the little donkey engines used to pull this huge weight up, which was then dropped repeatedly until the piles had gone into the ground. And that was happening all around you 24 hours a day. So, bang and clang was the order of the day.
Yeah, okay. And how many brothers and sisters did you have? I think you mentioned...
I'm the eldest of 5.
5, yep.
4 boys, and the youngest is a girl.
Yep, excellent. And what was your family's religious background back then? So tell us a little bit about that. It's quite interesting.
This is a trick question. We're leading up to something here. My family were very Catholic, both sides of the family, lots of priests and nuns. But I have the unique distinction of having a grandmother who was a nun. And the background of that was that during World War I, or around about that time, my grandmother was 16, and her mother died giving birth to child 11 or 12, I forget. And all of a sudden she's in charge of the household, because everybody older than her was either a priest or a nun. And then subsequently the man next door came back from a war with a missing limb, and great-grandfather said to her, well, you're going to have to look after him. And she did that very well. In fact, she became pregnant at age 16. And the night they found that out, she was put into a convent. My mother was born in a convent, and she was adopted out at the age of 2. So in my childhood, we were often about 3-4 times a year, used to go and visit this mystery nun in the convent of the Good Shepherd. And I think I was married before I found out she was actually my grandmother.
It's an interesting background there, you know, the Catholic, and we'll touch on that a little bit as you venture out to Australia. But what can you remember any times when you lived in Holland of family holidays or anything like that you'd celebrate as a family, or anything that sticks out in your mind?
Well, what was different, of course, you all know that the Dutch are great on push bikes, but basically that's all we had. So if you went on a holiday, you loaded your children onto 2 push bikes. There was only 2 people old enough to push them. So when there was 5 in the family, we didn't have holidays. But prior to that, you know, it would only be a farm stay type of thing where, you know, one day's ride on a push bike. Bearing in mind, you can basically ride from west to east in the Netherlands on a push bike in one day. You can cover the whole country. It is small. And at the time that I was living there, the population of Australia and the population of the Netherlands was pretty much the same. I mean, they've dropped back now. I think they're a bit below 20 million, whereas I think we're up to about 27, aren't we?
Yeah, 27, yep.
So yeah, holidays weren't much of... Look, the main reason my parents migrated was for what they saw as economic opportunities for their children. You know, life was very, very poor. I could sort of do a Yorkshireman sketch to
Oh, yes.
put that in perspective.
Yes, yeah. That's the old... Does anyone remember the auction? Yeah, how good's that? Yeah, very funny sketch. Oh, back in my day, yeah, that sort of thing. Would have dreamed of living in a tank. Is that the one? That's the one, isn't it? Yeah. These kids are going, what is that? So the year 1955, you were 10 years old.
Yep.
And your family decided to take your whole family, uproot them and take them into a different country. There was a couple of options, I believe.
Yeah, I think probably half of Europe wanted to migrate to either Canada or Australia. We had our name down for both countries. We'd had medical examinations and various other interviews for both. Australia put their hand up first. Probably regretted it since, but that's the way things work out.
Well, Mildura, but that's right.
And we came out on the ship, of course, because the 6-day war closed Suez down, which meant that migrant traffic after that became air traffic. But prior to that, I think from memory, were on the ship for 5.5 weeks.
Wow.
And I was seasick for half of that time.
So hang on, you went on a ship for 5.5 weeks and you were crook as a dog the whole time.
I was already seasick when the ship was still tied up at the wharf, and that's 30 kilometres inland.
Well, that bodes for a very nice trip. Oh dear. Now, thinking back when you lived in Rotterdam, what was one of your favourite foods? I love food, and I love what you're going to say because I know the answer, but what was your favourite food?
Actually, it's quite funny because this is a question that was rehearsed and I really couldn't come up with an answer at the time because I like all food.
Must be a Dutch thing.
I do have a favourite, Dutch croquettes, the way my mother used to make them. She wasn't a good cook, but Dutch croquettes were really, really something. I've got a batch on the go at the moment that I'm trying to make. Unfortunately, mine are sloppy at the moment. I'm looking for advice on how to firm them up a bit so I can roll them.
Yeah,
but I think I've got the spices right.
I know exactly what you've done wrong because I've made my grandma's Dutch croquettes quite a number of times. What you need to do is you need to heat it over heat until it goes glub.
Gloop.
Like that. So yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Come
I
and see
thought
me
I went-
after for some
I thought I went
advice.
through the gloop stage, but obviously not sufficiently.
They are fantastic. If we ever get the opportunity, we'll make some Dutch croquettes and bring them out because we've got quite a few Dutch people here, so they might go well.
If you're feeling rich at any time, that shop on OG Road are prepared to do them, but they know how to charge for them.
Yes.
And they're quite good.
All right. So, born in 1944, just at the end of the World War II. 10 years old, you've sailed out to Australia and take 5 weeks. When you got to Australia, where were you staying? Where did you go? What area did you live in?
We spent 5 or 6 weeks in a hostel, and then we found a house, a little place west of Ballarat called Linton, where we lived for about 3 years. Now, Linton is a very small place. There's about 450 people at the time, 508 today, so they haven't grown much either. Nothing desirable about the place much, but when we arrived, we were really virtually the first foreigners, as we were still called then, or new Australians if they're trying to be nice. But the other foreigners in the town were from Snake Valley, and they were treated as being different because they were from Snake Valley, but Snake Valley's 8 miles down the road. So we arrived sort of a bit like Martians, really. Thought differently, dressed differently, spoke no English, not a word.
Yeah. It's really, I said to Bert when I was chatting about this on Saturday night, it's really weird, like when you think of someone coming to the country, they've got different looks and all this, but you're predominantly white Caucasian people in a white Caucasian sort of society or community, and to be called weird and different really is something that we probably haven't thought about. And I asked Bert what was the main reason. It's because he couldn't speak English. They did dress differently. I said, well, how different do Dutch people, dress to Australian people? And you gave me an example of, I think it was a duffel coat. And he wore his duffel coat, this European Dutch duffel coat, and it had toggles on it. And it didn't have buttons or a zipper. And so immediately, kids being kids, picked up on that and said, oh, you know what? You're different. You've got toggles on your coat. and it didn't help that you were about 6'2", and didn't speak English. So I can imagine they've gone, well, who's this?
Yeah, I
bloke?
grew to 6'2" by the time I was 12. So I continued to stand out in the crowd and be picked on, if you like to put it that way. But because I was a very slender, no one's going to believe this, a very slender 6'2".
We all were, but
1.9 if you want to know what my actual height was. But look, kids are very, very adaptive. We were. And this, I want to make sure that you don't think I'm trying to boast here. By the 3rd year that I was at school in Australia, I won the English prize. Now, I believe the reason was I was so anxious to be like everybody else because I was sick of being picked on.
Yes. Yeah, my grandma tells me a story, or she told me a story when I was little, that she came out to Australia, similar time actually to when you came out on the boat, and she was left-handed, and she went to school in Australia, and they forced her to write right-handed. And she did that, and she conquered it just to fit in, which is quite interesting. So moving on, the other interesting thing was, just tell us about who sponsored you to come out to Australia.
Yeah, look, the whole thing seems to have been arranged by the Catholic Church. The hostel that we came to was Catholic. It was on the Hepburn Spa, Dalesford Road. It had been I suppose we'd call it it was a guest house. It accommodated about 8 families. We were only a small family because we only had 5 kids. One of my observations of the Dutch families was they all seemed to have their kids in odd numbers. They were 7s, 9s and 11s. Never seemed to do 2 4s and 8s, but anyway. And the house that we subsequently moved to in Linton had been arranged by the Catholic Church as well. So when I say we were Catholic, I am not joking.
There you go, very interesting background. I'm going to give you a break, and if you want to hand that over to Emily and Caleb, we're going to, both of you, I'm going to ask both. We're going to jump into your lives now. So you were seeing Bert is 79 years old. You guys on the other end of the spectrum, fairly young. And Emily, when were you born?
We were both born in 1997.
Oh,
so
1997.
6 months apart almost. I am the 10th of September and Caleb is...
The 11th of March.
11th of March, there you go. So
Yeah.
1997, far out,
Yeah.
makes me feel old. I finished year 12 in 1997.
Oh.
So yeah, that's very funny. And where did you, Emily, I'll start with you. Where did you grow up?
So I was born in Blacktown Hospital in New South Wales. We moved when I was 3 to Melbourne. We lived in Altona for maybe a year and then we moved out rural to rural Victoria. So,
Oh, right,
yeah.
rural Victoria as well. Bit of a
Yeah.
theme. Caleb, you were born in Adelaide?
Yeah, I was just born in Adelaide, in Flinders Hospital.
Flinders,
Yeah.
down south. Very nice, 1997. And Emily, your hometown growing up, I mean, you said you went 3 years in Blacktown. Would you remember much of that or anything? Or
I remember being really excited to move
Yeah.
and go on a plane to go down to Melbourne.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, I've not got any good memory, or I've not got
Yeah,
any
it's hard.
memory at all.
3 years
So,
old.
Yeah.
When you moved down to, was it Altona
Yeah.
Altona in Melbourne?
Yep.
How long were you there?
We were there for about, around a year and a half. So, wait,
Yep.
actually a bit longer. Hang on. Because I think we moved when I was 7, so maybe 4 years actually.
Yeah,
So
okay.
started primary school there, and I
Yep.
remember my sister being born in Werribee Hospital, and I refused to go to the hospital because we had fruit salad market day, and I didn't want to miss out, and I loved school. So
Oh, that's nice.
yeah.
That's sort of cool. And when, so you lived in Altona for a bit and then you moved to country Victoria?
Yes, so-
Whereabouts was that?
a town called Watcham, so it is an hour out of Horsham, an hour and a half out the Grampians, 2 hours from Bendigo, and it was a town of 97 people, 120. Oh,
120.
numbers
There
went
you
up.
There you go. Fact checks over here.
Yeah,
That's
thanks,
very
Mum.
good. Yeah. So you guys actually lived in similar country,
Yeah.
Ballarat, or Linton, Ballarat,
Mm.
in that area. Snake Gully, you would have known Snake Gully. It's not too far from
Yeah.
Horsham.
Yeah.
Snake Valley, sorry. Sorry, Bert. Yeah, very interesting. So you stayed
Yeah.
there, and then when did you come to Adelaide?
When I was, I want to say 12, when Mum and Dad finally decided to get married. We came over, they got married, and we lived in Prospect in a flat. So there were my 2 younger sisters and I, and then I've got 2 older brothers. So, but they didn't migrate at the same time.
Yeah, okay.
Well, we eventually all came to Adelaide.
Yeah. And you've got a bit of a Dutch heritage in you
Yes.
as well, which is very cool. Did that come through in your early stages of life, or was
yeah,
that prominent,
so
or did you do things? Or?
With Oma and Opa, that we spent a lot of time with them, and with my Nana as well, because Oma lived with Nana. We picked up on the Dutch heritage, love canasta, love Snooppies. They would always cheat. And the Dutch food, it kind of, I remember when we were living in Sydney that Opa would cook and do the koftas and the croquettes. My brother could not stand croquettes. I think he vomited from Mum's ones one time.
Common theme here.
Common theme.
Yep.
But yeah.
What about the Dutch salty licorice? Did you
I
like
love
that?
salted drops. I love
that's
them.
great.
Salted cats, everything. So Caleb does not.
No, you don't like
I have
that.
a stash in the cupboard that you haven't. You just look at it with disgust, huh?
Yeah, not my
Not
style.
your cup of tea.
No.
So Caleb, moving on to you. You grew up here in Adelaide. You were part of Golden Grove for a fair chunk of that growing up,
Yeah.
and you came to Sunday school here at Golden Grove.
Yeah.
What school did you go to?
I went to Heritage College in Oakden.
Yep,
so-
beautiful. We've got a lot of kids here probably that go to Heritage College, and I think James was one of the first ones to go from reception up to year 12. So, and how many brothers and sisters do you have?
Well, I've got 3 brothers and 1 sister and another step brother now. Half brother.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then 3 stepsisters.
And 3 sisters.
Oh, so quite a big family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got 1 older. I'm the second oldest,
Yep,
and then it goes my sister, then my 2 younger brothers.
yep.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
both a family of 5 as well. So
Oh,
Yeah.
from big families. Wow, that's good. Big cook-ups and everything. Did you like going to school?
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, it was great.
Say how you really feel your face.
Sort of. You know what? The funny thing is, I asked Bert that, and he said the same thing. He's like, yeah, but I didn't really like it. Yeah, it went into it. Yeah, just went because you had to.
Yeah, I felt a bit out of place.
Emily, did you like school?
Oh, I loved it.
You loved
I
it,
was
you
a
said? Yeah.
chatter though. I had a lot of friends, and I'd always go into different friend groups, and a bit of a gifted the gab type of gal. But Caleb was a bit more introverted, so I think that's why he
Yeah.
felt a bit.
Yeah, everyone's a bit
Yeah.
different, so that's all right. That's all good. What did you, growing up for fun, either of you can answer this, what did you do for fun? Like, what was did you play a sport or have a hobby or anything like that?
Well, we had neighbours in Northgate, and we would always go to the next door neighbour's house and play with them.
Yep.
And he was, if you would know Cedar Cottage.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah,
On
and we would
Foster's Road.
yeah.
Yep.
Because they were the caretakers, and their son went there.
Yep.
So we would always go across to the school and muck around.
Oh yeah.
Ride bikes.
Had access to it and
Yeah.
hang around there and all that. Yep. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Well, being out in the country, we had a lot to do. So
Yep.
my elder brothers and I would always go for scouts, go across to the resi, do commando crawls to go fishing and yabbing, and outdoor cricket with wheelie bins,
Yep.
and the
Yep.
pool, and
Very Aussie. Yep.
very Aussie, and build the house. Big.
Sorry, built a house, did you say?
We built our farmhouse, yeah.
Oh, right.
So we built from the ground up.
As a family? Was that a bit of a family thing?
Oh,
or?
a bit forced of a family thing. Dad was a bit of a slave driver,
Yep. Yep.
Learned to make concrete. I was the son that he never had, and he used to say that all the time. And I have two older brothers, so that just shows what they used to do.
Yeah, so you're just prepared to get in there, roll your
That's
sleeves
it.
up and do it. Good on you.
That's
That's
it.
awesome. Go get them. Now, growing up, if you've got a memory of like a favourite meal or something like that, what was one of your favourite meals as a family that you'd have?
Well, my dad would cook nearly every night, and I'd always love Thai green curry.
Thai green
And
curry.
Just any curry in general.
Oh, nice.
And he
Spicy or not
yeah,
spicy?
He always made it really spicy. So,
Did all your brothers and sisters like that?
no.
Yeah.
I was one of the
Always
main
one.
ones that
Oh,
liked
you
it.
liked it, yeah. Emily, what was yours?
We had a lot of different foods growing up. I remember distinctively Dad would make this lasagna that he got from a recipe from someone at work, and it tasted like dog food. And
Tasted
I
like
was the
dog
only one that liked it.
No
So
wonder
I
he
think,
liked
yeah.
you.
Yeah, but fried chicken he could do very well, and because his parents were Austrian chefs, so
Oh, right.
well, the granddad was. So I think he picked up a lot of skill from him before he passed away. I think Dad was only 12 when he passed away.
Yeah.
But yeah, fried rice, with crumb chicken, any day of the week.
Awesome. Now, you got married, I think it was in 2021.
Yeah.
Was that right? Am I remembering right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. How did you guys meet?
We both worked at Macca's at Enfield, and
Right.
I went to a Catholic school, all-girls school, and Caleb went to Heritage, and I said, oh, this guy's all right, he's a bit funny.
Got some good values?
Got some good values. A year later, we were both laughing about how the restaurant manager was dressed. He decided to come in his gangster wear and his gold chain, and yeah.
Right.
And
Is that how you remember it, Caleb, or
Yeah.
you got a different story?
Yeah, we just both laughed because he had this gold chain around his neck. And
But
yeah.
I think I was the first to talk to you, and I remember your lisp distinctively. And when we were saying our wedding vows, I remember talking to the person that married us, and I said, "Oh, I really liked him because he said 2:30."
2:30.
And,
Terrible joke.
she
That's such a
said-
dad joke, but anyway.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just the and then she said I was really mean and we couldn't include it, but it's the truth.
So at this stage, you were working at Macca's. You're both working at
Yeah.
Macca's. When was that? Like 2000 and...
Well, I started in 2011, and
Yeah.
Caleb started 2013 or something,
About
Oh, okay.
2013.
and then we started dating in what year? 2014, 2015.
2014.
2014.
2014. Yep.
So, oh yeah, because it's 10 years this year.
There you go.
Yeah,
very
so
cool.
pretty good.
So yeah, you've dated for 7 years. And then got married in
Yeah.
2021.
So
Very cool. Okay.
Yeah, we did things a bit backwards.
Yep.
And yeah, we ended up tying the knot after we had lived together for a bit. But
Yeah. So the interesting thing for me is that we saw Caleb. I remember Caleb being born actually, but that's how long ago it was. The interesting thing here is that you had this coming to Sunday school and to the Golden Grove connection and the Christadelphian connection. You sort of floated away a little bit, and then sort of. I'm just amazed at the story about coming back. How did you transition back into Golden Grove or back into Christadelphia? What made you think, oh, you know what, it's a really good idea. I think I'd like to go down that path again. What sort of encouraged you to do that?
well,
Either or.
Even though I did leave and did my own thing, I always had the memories of what I was taught and everything, and I kept a lot of the values as well that I learned from school. So there was, even though I said I didn't really fit in at school, there was a lot that I learned and appreciated from being at that school. Because you still feel like a family with everyone. Yeah. And even now.
Did you keep in contact much with guys at school or
the main,
families?
Yeah, there was one, my best friend from school, which was from first year, was Jordan Mitsos.
Oh, yes, yep.
And so he would always be checking in on me and encouraging me to come back and,
awesome.
and...
Yeah, just kept in touch with you.
Yeah, he always kept in touch, even though I was annoyed at it sometimes and I would complain. But yeah, he really did encourage me to keep coming.
Keep coming, yeah. So how did you then integrate that with Emily and say, oh, you know what are your beliefs? Like, obviously you have that conversation with Emily and...
I think it was 3 months until we were dating, or maybe even 2 months, and I said, if you don't believe in God, I don't want anything to do with you.
Right.
Which was pretty...
you said that?
Yeah, pretty game.
Okay.
Because
it's
we
like, but
had
actually
upbringing.
I do. Yep.
Yeah, because we had been, in a sense, not religion surfing, but it was trying to find God through different religions. So we started... because Dad was reading the Bible when I was born, and then he started reading and did his own study. So we went to different churches, but then it didn't line up with what he was reading, so we would go, nope. Mum and I did Jehovah's Witness for a little bit, and we had them come over every Tuesday for, I can't even remember what it was called, but it was basically trying to do first principles with Mum. And then we went to the Zenites, and I went to a Catholic school, so it was all a bit confusing, but I knew it wasn't right, especially when they started praying to the saints. So I was like, oh, I don't know, because Dad was a very big influence on me with religion.
Okay. Yep.
And then, we met, and I said that, and then you told me the truth, and I said, that actually makes sense. It doesn't make sense for me to fear the devil or that things like this exist, because it's not in God's characteristics.
Yeah.
And once you know that, it just, this whole weight, it's just being scared, walking in a dark hallway thinking something was going to get you. It was really terrifying as a kid. And then we went to Enfield, I think, as a meeting on the Wednesday night, and I was still at school, and I think you were too. You just got on your P's. And I distinctively remember sitting in one of the back rows, and I watched a dad punch a kid in the butt. And I said to Caleb, what do you want me to? And I remember Caleb leaving me, and then everyone else came around me, and I was that deer in headlights, but it was quite funny.
Little bit daunting,
yeah.
But you worked through it, and
so
obviously that's the way we discipline our kids here. So that's, I've got plenty of bruises from my lifetime. That's all right.
But it was just there, wasn't it? It was quite funny, actually.
Hopefully you haven't seen that anymore.
No,
That's all right. We're pretty
it was
good
just
here.
the once-off. It was
James and Sammy might need to do a little bit of that, but that's all right.
But we did go to Woodville and see Jordan baptised. That was really cool when he was 17.
Oh, so Jordan, one of your better friends from school got baptised, and I suppose that's a fairly big example for you, was it?
Well, we were 17 and he was 17 because we were all the same age.
Yeah.
And even though we still were, in a sense, we wanted to go along and we never lost what we believed in, it was the fact that I was working shift work and it was just too hard to go together. And then Caleb, you went a couple of times with Dad and Jared, and then it kind of fuzzled off when we moved down south. So I'm glad that it was actually quite funny how things happened, because when we started coming back, it was I finished my job up at Macca's and I had another job lined up to go to. So it was my last week of overnights and we were going to Woodville, and it was the war that started, wasn't it? And Jordan said, "This is the time," to Caleb. Oh wait, sorry.
He's just nudged her. She's going on too long. No, good point. We're cracking on. That's all right. What was the? Let's do this one. What was the happiest time in your adult life so far, and why? So, what was a time in your life that made you really happy, Caleb? If you can't think of it, that's all right. Emily can answer. That's fine. She's itching to go.
No, Caleb,
no.
talking this
What about your marriage? Happy times then? Yeah. Oh no, it wasn't.
Our wedding photos does look like he's in a lot of pain as well. So it's a being surrounded by people thing, I think. I think our happiest moment is, my happiest moment is when I met Caleb, to be honest.
Yep. Very cool.
He's just always been my best friend. So.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah,
that's always good to hear. Have you been on any memorable trips or outings or overseas holidays or anything like that?
Well, this is before, so this was when I was at school. I went with my dad to New Zealand, and that was the first time going overseas.
Very cool.
We went to North Island, South Island, and all the main what's it called?
I've never been there, so I don't know. We've got some New Zealanders out there. What's the main island of New Zealand? North and South? There you go.
So we saw all the
So
main...
you just went there for a holiday for what, 2 or 3 weeks?
Yeah, saw all the main attractions.
Yeah.
We went on a bus tour, and I was thinking that it was going to be all young people as well. And it was a bunch of retired old people.
And you and your dad?
Yeah. Yeah, and the closest in age was 26 years old, and I was 14, 13.
So fun times.
Yeah. But actually,
every child's dream.
Yeah, but I thought it was going to be horrible, but I actually really enjoyed it. Like meeting all the elderly people. They were really nice and friendly, and I actually really missed. I was really upset when it was over. Yeah. So
you probably had a bit of a bond after the trip and chatted to them. That's really nice. Yeah. What about you, Emily? Any trips overseas? Anything that stands out that you go, that was pretty cool?
I loved going to the Grampians. Even though it was only an hour and a half away from where we lived, it was just so much fun to go to, whether it was school camps, whether it was when our family from Sydney came down, we'd go there a lot too. So that is cool. And our honeymoon as well with Mount Gambier. I love that place. But apart from that, haven't been overseas yet until next week.
Oh, right, you haven't been overseas?
No.
Caleb, step up, mate.
That's it.
Organise that trip.
Yep.
Now, what do you guys do for work nowadays? I believe you work for the same company, no?
So my dad actually got Caleb into the line of work he's in.
Right, so you worked for the father-in-law?
Almost. He doesn't not anymore.
Oh, okay, all right.
But Dad would always make a joke that I'd marry into the company, and sure enough, I dragged someone in. So
he grafted me in.
Yeah.
Grafted, not employed, grafted. I like that. That's good. Mm. So what do you do for work, Caleb?
So I do formworking. So it's a lot of commercial work in the construction industry, doing all the mould and the scaffolding for columns and
more commercial stuff in high rise or things like that. Yep.
So there's a lot of labouring and carpentry work. Yeah.
And Emily, you're in the business still?
No, so I was a restaurant manager at Macca's for 10 years, and then I moved on to doing procurement at MCC Labels. So I deal with contracts and suppliers and negotiation and pricing and all of that fun stuff. So
did you have to go to uni or school or TAFE or anything like that?
No, I just picked
it up
skills,
as you went along?
Yeah, picked up skills cool. at Macca's. And
Macca's would have been a good learning curve for that. And
definitely.
From
14 all the way to 24, it was a big learning curve.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely. Mm. Now, when were you baptised? So, what did I ask that? Have I asked that already?
No.
I can't remember. It was
the 2nd of April last year.
It was only last year, wasn't it? One of our newest ones.
It was only last year.
what else have I got here? Oh, now, this is an interesting question. I haven't actually told you this question. Without notice. And this is probably mainly for you, Emily. How did you go telling your parents about Caleb and Christadelphians?
Well,
And we know how it's sorted out over here, that's how it's ended. But your first, like you've just gone, you've met Caleb, you thought, oh yeah, he's a nice sort. You know, this is someone I'd like to spend time with. And then he's told you he's a Christadelphian. You've said you need to believe in God. Yes.
yeah.
How did you sort of go to your family and say, oh, by the way?
Well, I think Mum at the start thought he was a bit dodgy because of his profile picture I showed her. And I remember her distinctively being like, first order having a boyfriend was a bit rough.
Yep.
And Dad, the second date I think we went on, he sat you down and gave you a bit of an interrogation, but it was mostly to do with your work life, not even...
Not religious,
just
it's just
recruiting,
work.
just the interview.
That was it.
But I think Dad just always went on his own teaching. I don't even think Dad asked about your religion, really, did he?
Yeah.
No, not really.
Yeah, which was quite strange. But now that he knows that we're baptised, he's like, oh, I'll sit down and go through the Bible with you. And when we were going through First Principles, Mum actually did lose her rental property. She got kicked out and she moved in with us because the real estate agents weren't very good. Christie's Beach, not very good. So when we were going through First Principles, we said to Mum, oh, you moved in with us, so you're coming along now. And she really did enjoy it. And then Uncle Brian tapped her on the shoulder and she went through her own First
Lo and
Principles.
behold, here we all are.
And
That's
we
awesome.
double dipped because we wanted to learn as much as we could. And there was
Very cool.
a blessing in disguise because at the time we thought, oh, Mum's not going to get her own space, she's not got her own place, she's going to feel really, in a sense that she's not got any privacy, and it worked out.
It worked out for the
yeah,
best.
which
There you
was
go.
God's
Pretty cool,
hand
isn't
in it.
Yeah. So, let's ask this one. What is one thing you love about Golden Grove meeting?
The humour. I love
The
how
humour.
you can have a joke with everyone.
There you go. That's right. That's very cool. Caleb, do you have anything to add, or?
Well, I was going to say the humour as well, but just everyone's really friendly and nice and very welcoming as well. Like, I haven't felt out of place at all here.
I think it's more so the question of not just Golden Grove, but the Christadelphian community.
Yeah.
You go into a Catholic church or you go into a different meeting, yes, they might be friendly, but they're not willing to get to know you. They're not, it's very cold and it's very warm in Christadelphia, and that's what it's the characteristic of God actually is here.
Is here, yeah.
And that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's a really good thing. Yeah. If you could share with your family an important value, and you had to pass it on to one of your family members, what would it be? What would a value of yours that you've picked up along the way? What would you pass on to your family members or friends?
Do you want me to go first? Yeah. Well, I've had this passed on from my nana where she used to say, never go to bed angry. Never go to bed sad with the person that you love. And a relationship is between two people, and when you have anger or a disagreement, you never look at the other person and you never reflect that anger. You always look, this is the problem that we're both trying to solve. You get an answer out of that and you come together closer, not further apart. And it's always look at the problem, not the person.
Yep. Does he get angry much? It doesn't seem like he does.
I was going to say
It's
something
pretty
a bit
chill.
cheeky, but no.
Nah.
No, very chill.
Does he wear the pants or you?
Caleb wears the pants, and I tell him he can say that. You know? I'm joking.
We all know who.
No. Actually, what was it? We had furniture delivered, and I said, no, he's the boss of the house, and he goes, well, does she let you say that?
Yeah.
Terrible. What about you, Caleb? Any words of advice, any values that you'd pass on to someone if you had to?
Caleb doesn't really, he's not one for words, but his actions show a lot. And I remember being 17 and he had some Aboriginal ladies around his car at Macca's, and the manager turned a blind eye to him and said, don't say anything to him. They asked him for a lift. He gave it.
Yeah.
And he was very scared, and they kept asking him for a cigarette. But Caleb is the most compassionate, kind person I've ever met. And I will say that is his quality that he'll pass down
traits,
as by
values.
works.
Well, if you can pass it on to anyone in your life, that's always a good thing. So, yep, do that. I think that's pretty much all the questions. You're quick to hand that off. Thank you so much, guys. That's been a really good insight and valuable sort of insight into your lives. And I know it's in the spotlight, but thank you so much. So if you want to give Caleb and Emily a round of applause, you can go down and all done. Thank you, guys. Appreciate that. Now, Bert, we're going to move back to you because we've got another 5 hours to go in your life worth of stuff. And that's trimmed down too, just by the way. I had to trim it right down.
I'm facing the door. I will be able to see them sneaking out.
Yeah. Oh, we'll catch them. We've got about 15 minutes. So I want to circle back to your life. And you were living in Ballarat. You were in Linton, a couple of Ks, about 20 Ks out of Ballarat.
20 miles, I think, 22 miles.
Yep,
So
and you lived in
30 Ks.
Linton for 3 years, and then you moved into Ballarat.
Moved into Ballarat once.
So your whole family moved into Ballarat?
Well, when you've got 5 kids going to school and secondary school wasn't available in Linton, obviously, so, there was a little rail motor that we used to take to school, which was an hour and a half each way, plus, 20-minute walk to the train, so made for a fairly full day. And if the whole tribe was going to be doing that, you might as well move the family, and that's what happened.
Yep.
We were Ballarat people from there on in.
Yep. And then, so in Ballarat, you were there for a couple of years. And then you moved into Melbourne when you were 17?
Yeah, when I was 17 looking for work, I couldn't find anything in Ballarat. I can remember one job I applied for, which was not exactly my preference, but it was a junior clerk's job, which was the only job advertised that particular day. And I applied, and I think there was 108 of us for a job that nobody would really want. And I think I came second. They only had one job available. So a couple of instances like that, and I decided that I would hitchhike to Melbourne every day, which is a variable thing, hitchhiking. So I used to start about 5:30 in the morning and get to Melbourne dripping wet. But eventually I found a job that was in working with punch cards, the early days of IT. Slowly graduated from there to computer operating, computer programming and systems analysis in the end, which is what I did for work until 1970, which made me about 26, I think.
So your first paid job was punch cards?
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So that was collating...
Yes, and sorting, collating and, summarising.
That sort of stuff, okay. So you were 19, you're doing that in Melbourne itself, and then you happened to meet a lovely lady,
I'd met
Sandra.
Sandra in Ballarat. When I actually spent 2 years doing engineering. Unfortunately, I fell in love with Sandra about that time, and I was never very good at concentrating anyway, but I found myself not really at concentrating on schoolwork. Not only that, the associateship diplomas in those days, I can remember my first year I had 12 subjects, and then in my second year I was carrying about 3 of those subjects, so I now had, 15 subjects to do, and was doing 4 nights of night school as well as all day, so it wasn't hard to drop that and start looking for work.
Yes, and especially if there was an interest on the side as well.
There was.
Yes.
And the strange part was, Sandra was at teachers' college, which is how we met between the 2 colleges, but she could concentrate and get her work done, but Jacko couldn't.
So how did you and Sandra actually meet? Well, I heard there was a bit of a dance.
We met at a very casual dance. It was called the Hayseed Hop. It was desert boots and corduroys and sloppy jumpers, which were the fashion at the time.
The 60s fashion.
This is a knitted jumper that went past your knees, which most of you wouldn't remember. They were very fashionable.
I reckon you could wear it and get away with it nowadays, though. It's amazing what people
You get away with anything now. But
So she was studying teaching college, and you were doing electrical engineering.
And when I shifted to Melbourne, her first teaching posting was at Menangatang,
Yes.
which is the centre of the universe. Menangatang is 60 k's from any other habitation of any kind, and the transport there, because we were all public transport in those days, Tuesdays and Thursdays there was trains in and out of the town. So in other words, it meant we used to meet by phone, and even then telephone wasn't particularly cheap at the time. I've done the conversion. A 3-minute call after 10 o'clock at night, phone calls were cheaper, and with the equivalent of $25 of today's money, we could get 3 minutes of phone time from a call box to a call box. And call boxes were drafty holes, I kid you not. Now, one of the amusing incidents out of that, the exchange at Menangatang was still one of those push-in jacks thing, right, which meant that the girl always, after 10 o'clock, listened in because she had nothing else to do. And we discovered after a while that if we spiced up the conversation a little bit and make her think that perhaps there could be a rumour that she could start, that there might be something going on between Bert and Sandra, then she wouldn't ask us, were we extending? And our record was 35 minutes for a 3-minute call.
Working it. That's awesome. Love that. And so some of you may not know this, but you told me that Sandra had a specific form of transportation.
Oh, yes. Sandra rode a Vespa.
A Vespa.
And that her father made her buy this rather than a second-hand car. Unfortunately, the road from Mildura, where her parents lived, to Menangatang was corrugated gravel, and it wasn't many months into her posting there that she came off the bike and scared herself. She sat, I think, beside the bike, which was she couldn't start again, for something like 3 hours waiting for the first car to come along. And so the result of that was that Sandra had the licence, but I had the scooter in Melbourne.
Right, okay. So you're a young married, you ended up getting married in
Ballarat.
In Ballarat.
In 64.
In 1964. You were a young married couple at that time, living in Ballarat.
Moved straight to Melbourne.
You moved straight to Melbourne, did you?
I'd been in Melbourne for some time.
Yep, okay.
In other words, I moved to Melbourne at 17, got married at 19.
Okay. So you then, as any young couple does, decide to have a child, and you had your first child in your early 20s, about 2021, was it?
Yeah,
you were?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember exactly how it went, but I think our second child, I was 21 when we had our second child.
Okay. So you tell us a little bit about that time of your life, your kids, how you named them. I thought that was quite funny. Your A, B, C, D.
Yes.
But tell us a little bit about that part of your life.
I was, in those days, you were a junior until you were 21. So I was at the unfortunate situation of being a married man and a junior as far as your pay scale is concerned. Now I can remember I was earning tax after tax less than £8 a week, but I was supervising 2 adult women who were getting £25. That gives you a vague idea of the relativity, right? So consequently we had to do something to get the extra money. Now Sandra could have gone back to teaching after Annette was born, but she, for some odd reason, she must have had a premonition. She decided not to do that, and she continued to look after the child. So we actually bought a milk bar that was losing money. Now that milk bar was open 16 hours a day. I was working rotating shifts on my computers. The milk bar was losing £10 a week. We actually put £10 cash down to buy the place, and absolutely everything we owned was on the bill of sale in case we'd failed to meet the payments. Fortunately, we were able to reverse the profitability of the shop fairly quickly, and we paid the loan back in half the time required. But we worked fairly long hours, and after 3 hours in that business, the only way we could converse with one another was to yell, because it was all a little bit too much. Because we lost one child and had two in that 3 years while we were working all those hours. So, yeah, we had a fairly hectic start to the business, to our lives. But the point that Luke made was, we named our children Annette, Brian, Kathy, David. David, of course, was 20 years after his sister. But, yeah, we were determined to continue down the alphabet. We wouldn't have liked the back of the alphabet. The tail end gets a little bit dodgy with names.
26, yeah, that'd be a fair
Once
effort,
you
I'll tell you that,
know,
right?
once you get into the Zebulons and Zenons and, you know.
Yeah, so you went through a fairly rough part of your life fairly early on in marriage when you lost Annette.
Yep.
And then you lost Brian as well.
Yeah.
So that's some pretty tough times. Did that bring you and Sandra together a lot more and lean on each other for that, or?
I think, yeah, look, especially Brian brought us, together much more, because by that stage, of course, we were baptised. With Annette, sort of part of our background was we really became non-believers about the time that we were, while we were courting and getting married. We didn't attend any church services of any religion for about 12 years. And I believe now, in retrospect, that probably this was God working in our lives, because between you and I, it is an enormous step from Catholicism into the truth. As far as doctrines are concerned, I can remember one brother saying to me, look, if you want to evaluate a doctrine, if the Catholics believe it, it's wrong. Okay, if you can relate to that. So, in other words, during that 12 years, we were always receptive to anybody's revealing of their beliefs. I can remember we've had Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses and whatever all unveiling their truths to us. But just as Caleb really came back into the truth through personal contact, our story is Brother Peter and Sister Yvonne Jansen at Mildura, who were very hospitable and probably still are, invited us around, bashed our ears unmercifully. We were there, a couple of times a week. Peter keeps immoral hours. I mean, he wouldn't start talking about the truth till midnight. On a number of occasions, we'd have pancakes at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. We ate breakfast with him twice. We were hard nuts to crack. When we eventually applied for baptism, Peter and Yvonne got a very shocked expression on their face, because they said, look, we this week decided that you're a lost cause and we wouldn't have anything to do with you anymore. And we walk in with our news.
Oh, there you go. Well, that was a nice surprise for them.
Exactly, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So you were up in Mildura at this stage, so you moved from Melbourne up to Mildura.
We shifted to Mildura in 1970, and we probably came into contact with the Jansens about 1974. We were baptised in 76, November 76.
Okay, and so during this time, you were baptised in 76. I think you bought a soft drink company in 1970.
70,
and ran that for 32 years.
Yes.
And that formed a fairly big part of your life and family life.
It was the same. It was, we loved losing businesses and trying to turn them around. We ran our soft drink factory by ourselves for 2 years. And when I say factory, I'm talking about making up the syrups, washing the bottles, filling the bottles, capping them, all that sort of stuff, selling and delivering them, doing the books. So once again, tremendously long hours. But we built that business up to having depots and 27 staff and all the complications that go with it. But eventually, like most small businesses, it's right. The supermarkets and various other influences killed that. Yeah. So, and really, the last few years have been the first time I haven't had anything to do.
Oh, you're getting a bit bored, are you, Bert?
Yeah, that's right.
That's all right.
Actually, what I've had a little bit of in the last while, if you know anybody who is having troubles with transport, for instance, they've got a bung knee, they need to go to the doctors, or any of that sort of stuff, I'm available.
Right. Now, one of your hobbies growing up was reading.
Was reading? Oh, yes.
Yep, you were very, very much into, and Sandra was a big book lover as well.
Yeah.
Has that continued on, or is that sort of petered off a little bit?
I'm not sure when we were in the shop and the factory how we ever slept, because at one stage of the game, I know the early days of the factory in the 1970s, we used to average a book a day each.
A novel?
A novel.
Wow.
And then, of course, once the Bible reading started, we still kept reading. But actually, in a couple of weeks' time, I'm having one eye done, and hopefully the reading will recommence. But yeah, I can't last, a lot of time on reading at the moment.
It's a lot of books over
But
that many
yeah,
years.
so, and you're not going to believe this, talking. We really
Oh,
did.
I can
we
vouch for
really
that.
did. Fortunately, one of the aspects to the business was that we regularly had truck trips, and then Sandra would be the passenger, and that's when our business meetings occurred, when our family problems were sorted out, when we were husband and wife, was on trips.
So we'll start wrapping up because we've only got a couple of minutes. But last couple of questions. If you could change one thing here at Golden Grove, what would it be? We've got a couple of minutes. That's all.
Actually, yeah, I'm sorry. Did we ask this question last Saturday?
No, this is a question without
it's
notice.
A question without notice. No, look, overall, I'm content at Golden Grove, right? Now, I've got to give you a little bit of background of my life, right? In that soft drink factory, which basically ran itself to some degree, my job was to find out what's not happening correctly. So my job was to keep steaming through the place, looking around, right, while 8 or 10 or 12 people were working away. And consequently, all I notice is the things that are wrong. So I really have to focus on the talk to find out what he's saying, not just what he's doing wrong, right? So don't come to me looking for a positive reinforcement. I'm sorry, I'm a critic, okay? So yes, I could sit here for the rest of the afternoon and tell you what's wrong with Golden Grove, but overall, be content that I'm content.
Maybe we use you as the barometer of the ecclesia. If you're content, Bert, everyone's fine. Everything's fine. I had to laugh about one story you did tell me last Saturday, and that was when you and Dave were going through some tough times. It might have been COVID or something like that, and you ended up having some meals.
Oh, yes.
And you've told us that you love Dutch croquettes and some other food and all this sort of stuff. But there was one thing in particular that, as an ecclesia, we banded together, we got behind you,
Yeah, that's
we
right.
sent you a whole lot of meals.
A whole lot of sisters went to a lot of trouble and supplied us with food. It all arrived the same day. I think there was actually 6 deliveries. Every one of those meals was about 3 meals equivalent for David and I, and just over half of it was tuna mornay. I have no problems with any food except tuna mornay. And being the cantankerous so-and-so that I am, I said to David, because I hate this stuff, we will eat it first. I was always trained you never throw anything away in the way of food, right? So we ate tuna mornays for, I think it was 8 days straight. And I'm sorry, I am not converted.
Okay, so if Dave and Bert are going through any more tough time, please do not give them tuna mornay. Anything else but. All right. One last question before we wrap it up, and thank you so much for your time. And Golden Grove and Christadelphia and the wider community is such a big part of yours and David's life at the moment. What things do you value the most here? Like, if you had to put something into words, what would you value the most out of Christadelphians, out of your faith, out of Golden Grove?
Well, obviously, I could talk at some length about our superior doctrines. I mean, these lead to eternal life. But, I mean, what distinguishes this meeting from other meetings, perhaps, the fellowship is good, the friendship is good. It's a little disappointing compared to what we had in Mildura, but it was a smaller meeting, and it was the centre of the universe for travellers. In other words, we had people to stay, sometimes 3 times a week. We very rarely had a meal on our own. If it was somebody's birthday in that ecclesia, it was everyone's birthday. It was held at the hall, etc. Right now, I'm not. Let me just give you one example of where it has fallen in the hole a little bit at Golden Grove. I can remember an occasion when I asked one couple to come round for a meal at our house. Sandra was still alive. I think I'm going back 3 years, right? And the brothers said, no, we can't come to your place because you haven't been to ours yet. And that was 3 years ago and we still haven't.
Right. Well, we won't name and shame.
No, I'm not naming.
Or shall we? No. No, I think that's a really good point. And I suppose, like you said...
I think there could be a lot more of that sort of activity than there is, because honestly, the joy that we have in the truth is to be shared. The enthusiasm that we can generate should be amongst us, you know. We live in a world where people are closing in on themselves, and we should not be part of that trend.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Absolutely. I think hospitality is a big thing, and if we can grow together as a family and you know, do that a lot more, I think it's very, very
That's
beneficial.
great. That would be my suggestion for
And I know
improvement.
Dave's a very good cook, so you need to step up, mate.
Well,
That's all right, Dave.
David wears the apron.
He does. Yeah. Good cook. Oh, thank you. For everyone, you love that? That was fantastic. Really good, Dave. Well, thank you so much, Bert. This is Meet Your Members, and Bert and Emily and Caleb, we thank you so much for taking the time to share with us those really insightful words of wisdom and where you've come from. So thank you again. Big round of applause for Bert. Thank you. Thank you, mate. Appreciate that. Very well done. If any of you want to, we've got another one of these set up for September. If anyone wants to be part of it, then feel free to let me know. I think we've all got some really good stories of what we can share with our members here as well. Yeah, how we came into the truth and how it affected your lives. And I think it's good for us to see that in each other, to bring us closer to each other. So we'll close tonight, well this afternoon, with prayer if you just all stand. Now, dear Heavenly Father, we come before you now, thanking you very much for the opportunity that you've given us to be able to open up as an ecclesia and talk about our members and become more close to each other. And we thank you for the blessings in our lives that we can do that. And we pray that you always watch over us and guide us with your loving hands to your kingdom. And we ask now, as we leave here, we do open up to each other on more of a private and spiritual level, and we share each other's problems, our excitement, our joys, our wants, our thanks, and we all keep that in mind, that you are in the background working in our lives. So we now leave this in your hands, in and through the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.